All right, so I think at this point, it's pretty safe to say that I think this is one of the crazier off seasons that we've gotten in at least like recent memory. We've been going through division by division, taking a look at every team's off season, breaking down the moves that they made, the guys that left, the guys they brought in, and deciding whether did they get better, did they get worse, how did their off season go. We've taken a look at the NL East, the AL East, and today we're gonna break down the NL Central. This is Smarter Baseball, where we deep dive into everything going on throughout Major League Baseball. If you enjoy the content and want to support the channel, go ahead and like the video, subscribe to the page, turn on notifications, go ahead and follow on social media. The links are down in the description, and let's get into this. Like I said, we're going through the NL Central, every team here. We're taking a look at the guys that left, at least guys that played relatively on the major league roster, even if that's in some kind of a bench role, a bullpen role, something like that, and looking at the guys that they brought in that, according to Fangraph's roster resource page, is projected to make the 26-man roster. We could go through every single transaction and roster move and everything. We'd be here forever. I talk long enough as it is, trying to keep this short and sweet. So let's go ahead. First, we're going to take a look at the Chicago Cubs. Their main big loss here first, obviously, is Wilson Contreras, one of the top hitting catchers in baseball. 113 games this last year, 815 OPS, 132 WRC plus, and had 3.3 FWAR. Kind of had that in between starter to all-star level, between 2 and 5 there. But we know he's one of the better hitting catchers in baseball. Broke down this deal when it happened. You can go check that out for more on him. For the Cubs, you also have Higgins, Ortega, Hayward, probably thankfully, along with Franmil Reyes, all kind of bench guys here coming out. Not anything that's necessarily like you're super worried about losing any of these pieces or anything. This is all stuff that pretty frequently bench guys kind of come and go, replace them. You also have starter Wade Miley coming out though. Only 9 games, but in those 37 innings that he pitched, 3.16 ERA, 3.95 FIP. That was pretty solid, and if that's kind of what you can expect from him, a very solid middle of the rotation guy there. I mean, potentially something there that you're having leave, but let's get into who they bring in then. The main guy, obviously, Dansby Swanson, who we talked about in the NL East video. 162 games, 776 OPS, 116 WRC plus. But we know that Swanson, what he brings defensively dwarfs this being his best offensive season so far there. 6.4 FWAR has him well above the 5 for all-star level when we're talking WAR. Cubs also bring in Hosmer, Mancini, Bellinger. All 3 of these guys probably going to play at least somewhat significant innings, games, whatever. They're going to kind of get a shot here. Bellinger especially is kind of the one that we did a whole video breaking down, can he bounce back at least close to the player that he used to be? And that's gonna be yet to be seen. That'll be a very interesting watch here. 144 games for him this last year, 654 OPS, 83 WRC plus. Those are well below the offensive numbers that we've seen from him, but still putting up 1.7 FWAR, so still giving you some defense out there. If he can get those offensive numbers at least close to, if not a little bit above average, I think Bellinger could still be a very productive player in this league. He's still fairly young. You also get Barnhart, backup catcher there, and to replace Miley in the rotation here, Jameson Taillon over from the Yankees, 32 starts, 177 and a third innings, 3.91 ERA, 3.94 FIP, 2.3 FWAR, has him right above starter level, so kind of fits exactly what this Wade Miley role would have been, or how he was pitching. in that very solid, like middle of the rotation, like third kind of guy in a rotation. Now bring in Brad Boxberger as well, along with a couple other relievers, but Boxberger's the main one here. Very solid this last year. 70 games, 64 innings, 2.94 ERA, 3.57 FIP. Pretty solid for a reliever there. That just kind of helps add another guy that you can rely on later in games. So overall for the Cubs here, you look at, you bring in Dansby Swanson, you lose Wilson Contreras, both kind of top guys, you could argue, at their positions. And like I said, with the Braves in this is now the flip side of this. If you're going to take guys who are relatively the same like talent level, and even if you want to say Contreras is a better catcher than Swanson, and I would give you an argument there, you're going to get more value, I will still argue, out of the shortstop position than catcher, just because catchers don't play as much as other position players. They need more time off, so you're going to get more games for sure out of Swanson. That just over a full season is going to help him build more value for the team. Now you swap out a couple of these bench pieces for some of these more kind of starter type players. You know, Hosmer maybe can still kind of fill a starting role there. 104 games for him this last season with a 104 WRC plus. So right around a little bit above average there. Maybe he's still got something, you know, you're not paying him what the Padres were paying him, so that's a plus. But Mancini, Bellinger, these guys come in to fill more kind of starter roles than some of these guys that were leaving. And hopefully you get more innings out of Tyone than Miley. That's going to be kind of hard to do, but I'll knock on wood for you guys that doesn't happen. And Boxberger comes in, just adds a solid reliever. I mean, I think the Cubs got kind of sneakily better here, and maybe it's not this year. I could see them as a dark horse this year, but maybe next year, especially, they make a couple more moves like this. Maybe we're really talking about the Cubs in this division. Now let's go one of the teams at the bottom of this division, though, and that's the Cincinnati Reds. Big, long list of guys leaving here. I mean, as far as guys that had somewhat significant roles, you've got Moustakas, Kyle Farmer, who played 145 games, 92 WRC plus, 1.4 FWAR though, almost kind of that starter level, more kind of defense than offense there. Donovan Solano had 80 games, more kind of bench production though. Aquino, if you've watched a couple of my videos, I suck at names. I will spend all day looking these up. I'll still get them wrong. Austin Romine, Garcia, Papierski, all of these guys, couple of catchers there that you're losing, even some arms too. You've got Anderson and Minor coming out of the rotation, Law, Warren, Moretta, Hoffman, Strickland. I mean, 5 relievers leaving here. But the thing for the Reds here is that none of these guys are like really even like solid everyday starter quality guys that were leaving here, or at least didn't give you that production this last year. So a lot of people leaving, a lot of turnover, but not a lot here that, again, if you're the Reds, you're really worried about like these guys leaving town. So they, on the flip side now, bring in Will Myers, 77 games last season, 713 OPS, 104 WRC plus, had 1 FWAR in those 77 games. You figure double that, get close to a full season, probably at least a solid everyday guy, kind of right around there. Kevin Newman over from the Pirates, 78 games, 688 OPS, 94 WRC plus. Also, though, 1.3 FWAR. So, again, figure double that. He's more, again, a defensive guy, but he at least can kind of fill that everyday, shortstop, second base role, whatever for you. Kurt Casale, Mail, a couple backup catchers here. Luke Weaver comes in. This is kind of an interesting one. Some weird numbers for him. potentially goes into the starting rotation. 26 games last year, 35 and 2/3 innings, had a 6.56 ERA, which you see that, you think, why are we even signing this guy? 2.69 FIP. So something wasn't lining up there. Maybe there's something here that the on-field production wasn't quite matching how he was actually pitching. Maybe you give him more of a full season, a better look, and maybe there's something there, Reds fans. So as far as the Reds here, I mean, like I said, just a ton of turnover, a lot of these guys leaving that, I mean, this was a really bad team this last year. You got to kind of cut some of the dead wood out of here. God help me if any players ever see this and hear me talk about them like that. I don't mean to talk about players like that, but again, a lot of guys leaving that you're not all that worried about having to hold on to. You bring in Myers, Newman, they fill kind of some of these everyday spots potentially. Like you said, maybe there's some upside with Weaver, but I mean, I wouldn't really even say that this team got all that better or anything. And I mean, they're still just going to be probably really bad this last year or this next year. So they stay relatively the same. All right, next up, we've got the Milwaukee Brewers. Guys on their way out. Andrew McCutchen, Omar Narvaez, Jace Peterson. All three of these guys filled fairly significant roles, but nothing too crazy. McCutchen, 134 games, 700 OPS, 98 WRC plus. So, I mean, he's far cry from peak McCutchen at this point, but possibly there's still something there. Maybe there's still a role for him somewhere. Narvaez, we talked about with the Mets in the NL East video. This was definitely a down year for him. 84 games with a 71 WRC plus, but still put up 1.1 FWAR. He's a pretty solid kind of platoon option. Gonna give you, decent productivity. Not anything that's gonna blow you away though, but he's a better hitter than this OPS and WRC plus from this year. Peterson could bounce around, play a handful of spots, 113 games. Again, a guy, 698 OPS, 96 WRC plus, so the offense isn't entirely there, but put up 2.2 FWAR, so at least gave you starter level quality in those 113 games, bouncing around, third base, second base, anything like that. Now, as far as everyday guys, Colton Wong, second baseman, leaving, 134 games, 769 OPS, 117 WRC plus, 2.5 FWAR. Again, there's at least offense here with Colton Wong, and very solid everyday player at this point. Hunter Renfroe, also 125 games, 807 OPS, 124 WRC plus, 2.5 FWAR. So again, definitely a guy you're fine with playing every day, bringing a little bit more offense there as well. Now, we already talked about with the Cubs, Brad Boxberger leaves here. We went over his numbers already, but he is one of 8 Brewers relievers here that are leaving, and I'm not going to take the time to go through all of them. There are a couple guys in here. I mean, we've got Suter with a 3.78 ERA, 4.40 FIP. Perdomo with a 3.80 ERA, 4.80 FIP. I mean, there's some talent in here, some value, but not outside of Boxberger, not any guys that are real solid, guys that you're really going to lean on later in a game. It is a lot of arms to have leaving one bullpen, though. Who do they bring in to address all of this? In the trade with the Braves, with the A's, you get catcher William Contreras, 97 games, 860 OPS, 138 WRC plus, 2.4 FWAR. I think if he gets the full-time starting catching role here, which I don't know offhand who the Brewers would have to play over him, that should be at least very good offensive value behind the dish there for you. Jesse Winker comes over, 136 games, 688 OPS, 109 WRC plus. Now, I watched Jesse a lot this last year, obviously kept up with what was going on here. Definitely a down year. Playing in Seattle doesn't help anybody offensively, but there just seemed to be something off with him. Now, there are reports of it, anything from some injuries to like work ethic stuff. Just hopefully for Jesse, hopefully for Brewers fans here, you guys get bounce back Winker. You guys have probably seen a lot more of what he could do in the NL Central there. Now, hopefully you're on the flip side of it and getting to watch the benefit of that happening for you. Brian Anderson also comes over from Miami. He's filling a bench role there. Now, Brewers get Wade Miley, who we talked about with the Cubs there. On the flip side again, hopefully he keeps relatively the same numbers, but stays healthy, gives you guys more games, more innings than he did in Chicago. And a couple other arms coming over here, but not anything we really need to address all that much. So for the Brewers, Contreras and Winker come over. Those guys definitely give you a lot of at least potential offense. I think Contreras for sure has that offense. With Winker, it's kind of still up in the air whether he gets back to the offensive player that we've seen with him before. If he can get there, that's a lot of offense coming in just between the two of them. But the argument is there, I think, to say, does that outweigh what you're losing in all of the roles that these guys like Wong, Renfroe, McCutchen, Narvaez, and Peterson all filled in different ways here, not just offensively? And I would have to lean more towards all five of those guys than just what these two are going to bring offensively for you. You also get Miley in here. Very small sample size again, but if he could be that pitcher, that could be a big add in the middle of this rotation, middle towards the end. Boxberger is also a very solid reliever leaving, as well as the other 7 guys. I would probably have to lean more towards, I think the Brewers end up getting a little bit worse here. I think the guys that you bring in, there is talent potentially there, but there are some question marks with it, and it just doesn't outweigh all of these guys that you have leaving here. That's going to have to mean that the Brewers rely a lot on some other younger guys to fill these roles then, if you're not bringing them in through trades and free agency and all this stuff in the offseason. Let's go ahead. We're going to head to Pittsburgh now. For the Pirates, Ben Gamel, Kevin Newman, Castillo, all leaving here. None of these guys, again, really Gamel, 115 games, 97 WRC plus, no WAR. So basically was your replacement type level player right there for you. We already talked about Newman. Solid every day, but definitely leaning more towards the defense up the middle than the offense, which isn't anything crazy. You see that pretty frequently with middle infielders. Castillo, definitely more of a bench role utility guy there. They lose a good handful of arms here as well. Thompson, Wilson, not even going to try with a couple of the rest of these, but again, none of these guys that were putting up crazy numbers were anything that you're really worried about leaving. It's for these rebuilding teams, sometimes it's a lot of just turnover just to get new, younger faces in here. So Pirates go out then. They bring in G-Man Choi, first baseman that was with the Rays, 113 games last season, 729 OPS, 116 WRC plus, which was kind of a down offensive year for him. Still kept a good on base, but the power came down a little bit. 1.3 FWAR. He's a pretty solid everyday player over there at first base. Not anything that's going to blow you away by any means. Andrew McCutchen, at least just for your heart's sake, it's got to feel great seeing McCutchen come back to Pittsburgh there. Hopefully this is his last year. He retires there, goes out on top, all of that. That would be an awesome story to see. But we talked about him with the Brewers. Maybe not an everyday role, but if he kind of fills a platoon role, something like that, maybe there's still something productive he can give this team. Santana comes over. He finished last year with the Mariners, watched him again a lot. He's a very patient hitter, still has power in that bat. 131 games, 692 OPS, a 102 WRC plus. He can just give you good, patient at-bats, get some doubles, home runs. Probably the shift going away too is really going to help him. Austin Hedges comes over, fill one of the catching kind of roles, back up. Maybe he starts, hopefully not here. 105 games last year, 42 WRC plus, -6 FWAR. Hopefully he's in a bench role for you. Connor Joe comes over from the Rockies, kind of just feels this like he can play around outfield, first base. 697 OPS, 87 WRC plus. For the rotation though, Rich Hill comes in. Again, just a solid, like, middle of the rotation kind of guy. With Boston last year, 26 games, 124 and a thirds innings, 4.27 ERA, 3.92 FIP, 1.8 FWAR. You figure he gets another start or two. He's right at that 2 for like starter level when we talk WAR. Vince Velasquez also comes over, 27 games, 751 innings, 75.1 innings, 4.78 ERA, 4.25 FIP. Maybe he gets, he's got another year under his belt, gets a full role in the starting rotation. Maybe he settles in. Those numbers come down a little bit more. If anything, it's probably going to give you innings at the back of that rotation. You get Garcia in here for the bullpen, 65 innings last year, 3.74 ERA, 4.27 FIP. And Hernandez, as well as a Rule 5's gonna at least get a shot to make this bullpen. So, overall for the Pirates here, for where they're at, I kind of like this offseason for them. Did they do anything particularly flashy? No. Did they trade away big pieces, get a bunch of prospects back, kind of push back the rebuild? No. But for where they're at, a team that is still kind of in this rebuild mode, some of their young guys have come up. You got O'Neal Cruz, all that. They're maybe still, 2-3 years away from really going for it. But these are some solid little adds to this team just to kind of fill some roles, get some guys that have been around the league, can show the young guys. Not really losing a whole lot here either. I think the Pirates did get a little bit better here, and even if maybe that doesn't totally carry over towards win-loss, all that, I think you start seeing the Pirates play a little bit better brand of baseball this next season. Now this brings us to our last team, the St. Louis Cardinals, division winners this last year. And the Cardinals are going to do what the Cardinals are going to do, man. Starting pitcher Jose Quintana on his way out. Now, after getting him in the trade, 12 starts, 62 and 2/3 innings, 2.01 ERA, and a 2.6 FIP, 1.8 FWAR in, we're talking a little over a third of a season there. He was beyond solid for this team there. Now, does that hold up over a full season? His full season numbers were a little bit higher than this, but Quintana is at least a very, very solid 3 in a rotation, maybe 2 in some rotations there. That, especially for this Cardinals team, as I'll maybe get into in a little bit here, that needs some starting pitching, I think that's a guy you should have held on to. Corey Dickerson also leaving here off the bench. Outfielder, 97 games, 98 WRC plus. Alex Reyes is kind of an interesting one here. He leaves the reliever. He's had some playing time with them before, filled some innings, but didn't play in 2022. So, I don't know, maybe there's something there that they're losing, or maybe the injuries end up kind of catching up to him. He's not ever the player that he was projected to be, or the player that he kind of has peaked as at this point. That's just kind of a little side note there. So that's really it for the Cardinals leaving. Like you said, Cardinals have like the Cardinal way that they do things. This offseason is by far like the most fucking Cardinals thing I've ever seen, because they only lose these guys, right? Now, who do they bring in to make this team even better, to fill any of these roles? Wilson Contreras, and that's it. Just him. Like we talked about with the Cubs there, and I feel like this was just a pure, like, almost spite move by the Cardinals here, potentially. Like, oh, so Yadi's retiring. He's been a menace for his entire career. We hate the Cubs, right? Their best player, like one of their best players, is hitting free agency. Why don't we just sign him? Because fuck you, Cubs. He comes over, fills this role for Yadi. Like we said, one of the better hitting catchers in baseball. Also has a really good pop time. The rest of the defense, we kind of see, I mean, electronic strike zone is going to take away framing whenever that comes around. But we know what Contreras brings to the table. Definitely helps out the offense here. And when we talk about then looking at this team, I mean, just on the fact that you only had Quintana for the little amount of time that you did after the trade, I gotta lean towards, I think the Cardinals did get better with this. I think they're going to be better than they were this last year just off of this. Again, I'll explain in a second, making sure with everything, but looking at this, what Contreras brings to the table outweighs what is leaving here. I would have liked the Cardinals to hold on to Jose Quintana. Starting pitcher is a big need for this team, and they didn't really do anything this offseason to address it, let alone letting Quintana, who was beyond solid in the time that he was with you guys, walk out the door. I think that's where they should have gone over signing Contreras here, but I can't really argue that signing Contreras doesn't help this team more than what they're losing here. The Cardinals always just seem to find a way, and they're probably still going to be just as good as they were, if not better, despite not really adding any starting pitching that a lot of us feel like they really need. So go ahead, comment down below. What do you think about these takes? What do you think about the moves? Is there anything that I missed? Again, for when I say the teams got better, worse, stayed the same, anything, I'm not looking at guys progressing, coming back from injuries. We're only judging the offseason moves here. The guys that left, the guys that get brought in, guys that stayed with the team, re-signed, anything like that. The team stays the same then. I'm not counting that with this. So comment down below what you guys think about these off seasons, these moves, how the teams progressed. If you made it this far, hopefully you enjoyed watching. If you did, show your support for the channel, like the video, subscribe to the page, turn on notifications, do all of that stuff. You guys have been killing it with that recently. I super appreciate it. I was trying to just hit 500 subscribers like a week ago, and now we're almost to 1,000. So let's see if we can blow past 1,000 by opening day or by spring training. That would be awesome. I love you guys. Thank you so much. Thank you for all the support. Have an awesome day. We're going to go through every division, hitting the AL Central next. Stay tuned for that. I'll see you in the next one.